Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? I hope you are having an amazing Saturday. I hope you're getting all of your relaxation, reading, and whatever you want to do in. It's warm here. I'm happy to report my reading slump appears to be over. Thank goodness for an epic fantasy. How did that happen? But I am taking it and running with it. And I'm getting ready to go to a wedding in a few hours, so I need to get this video done. What am I coming to? Oh, I should show you my shirt because I know you guys usually love my t-shirts. This one was bought for me by my husband and I love it. It says, "Bookstores Cats, Life is Sweet." You guys don't get to see my cats very often because they don't like to just sit still while I videotape, but they are part of my reading life. This is by Out of Print Tees, which is an amazing company that does literature-related t-shirts and all sorts of stuff. Definitely check them out. Not sponsored. Huge fan. But what am I coming to you with today? I'm going to be talking really fast because I have a lot to get through. But the other day I was watching my friend Olive over at ABookOlive. She did a video called Books That She Can't Stop Thinking About. Watched the video, so many books that I hadn't heard of, so much fascinating conversation that I sent a comment to her and was like, I need to read all of these and I want to steal this idea. And she gave me her go-ahead, and so I'm doing it. I'm going to talk to you guys about 10 or 11 books that I cannot get out of my head for a variety of different reasons, going in all different directions, and some of them read ages ago. So, because I need to talk fast, I better get started. The first book I'm going to tell you about is A Coin in Nine Hands by Marguerite Yourcenar. This is translated from the French by Dora Katz, and this was published by the University of Chicago Press. I read this in college, which we will just say for my sanity was quite a while ago. This is the story of a 10 lira coin on a single day in 1933 Rome. That coin travels through the hands of a number of people, 9 to be specific, a young artist, a prostitute, and a woman who is planning the assassination or the attempted assassination of Mussolini. This was the first book that I ever read where an object created the story arc, and I thought it was brilliantly done. Whenever people are looking for something that is off the beaten path, is just not your normal novel setup, I recommend this. It also, whenever I see a book or a movie where an object is sort of the catalyst for the narrative structure, for me, this is the book that started that for me. So I always think of this book whenever that happens. There was a movie a few years ago called The Red Violin. This book, the minute I watched the movie, I was like, oh, this is Marguerite Yourcenar. So I highly recommend A Coin in Nine Hands by Marguerite Yourcenar. The next book I'm going to tell you about, I'm not going to talk much because I've talked about it quite a bit on my channel, and that is Parish Trout by Peter Dexter. This is the story of a man, Parish Trout, in Georgia, a small town in Georgia. He runs a store and he lends money to the less fortunate and basically takes advantage of them in many, many ways. And one day he winds up accidentally killing a young black girl. And he thinks as a white man he is going to basically get away with what has happened. And this is the story of that town's reaction. This book is about reputation and who you are within your community. And this is also a book about racism from different angles. I thought this book was flippin' brilliant. It won the National Book Award in 1988 or 89, I can't quite remember. And I highly, highly recommend it to people. So Parish Trout by Peter Dexter. Okay, the next book I'm not even sure I can tell you exactly what it's about, but I think about it all the time. Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin. This is translated from the Spanish by Megan McDowell, and this won the tournament of books last year. So there you go, there's another stamp of approval. This is the story of a woman who is in a hospital bed dying from being poisoned by insecticide, which is based on a set of true events that happened. And this book is brilliant. This book is weird. This book is hard to understand and hard to follow, but descriptive, and the language is gorgeous, and you will never not think about this book once you've read it. I give it to people who, again, are looking for something a little bit different. I also think that Samanta Schweblin is going to be a worldwide phenomena as she continues to publish. I think this book just is the start of the career for me personally, of a woman who I'm going to just hunt down everything that comes out and is translated into English. I think it's brilliant, and that's Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin. I still will stop and go, I'm not sure I know what that book was about, but I'm thinking about it all the time. The next book I'm going to tell you about is How to Read and Why by Harold Bloom. Now, Harold Bloom is a literary critic and professor. I want to say he was at Yale. I'm not sure if he's still alive. If he is an older gentleman, because I've been reading him since college. I went through a phase where I bought every book that he put out. He writes about literature and canon and books that we should read and why we should read stuff that is considered part of the canon. He has an amazing book called The Western Canon where he goes through time and tells us what to read and why. And this book sort of just inspires, for me, a love, an absolute passion for the novels that came out to inspire the literature I love today. In this one, he talks about poetry, he talks about plays. He's a huge Shakespeare. Everything starts with Shakespeare for him, and he's probably not absolutely wrong. He talks about Don Quixote. But there's two sections in here in the modern novel section where he talked about Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, which inspired me to read the book, and it is absolutely one of my favorite books, and Cormac McCarthy is one of my favorite authors because of that. And also he talks about Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. Him and I agree. I think Song of Solomon is Toni Morrison's most amazing novel. I know Beloved gets a lot more play. He talks about that a little bit more. But it's just, he just talked about literature in a way that I wanted to be able to speak to it. And he made me love it even more and think about different books that I hadn't read that came from the past that inspired the future. So that is How to Read and Why by Harold Bloom. I recommend any of his stuff. I think he's really, really, really good. When anyone asks me about a perfect novel, what do I think are perfect novels? And one of the books that always pops into my head, you guys know my favorite book ever would pop into my head, but this is one of those, and that is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I don't think there's a better written first couple paragraphs in all of American letters. I think it's freaking amazing. I think about Janie. This is the story of Janie and her relationships and her town and her life and the decisions she makes. I will never forget her. I will say this book was the first book that really challenged me with dialect and made me a stronger reader because of it. And it broke my heart. It's amazing. And I really highly, highly recommend. To me, this is one of the great American novels. If you are ever sitting down and you want to say, what do you think the top 10 best American novels ever written are? To me, this is one of them, and I give it to people all the time, and I quote the beginning of it constantly, and I've already read it once on this channel, so I'm not going to read it again. But if you haven't read Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, you are missing out, I'm telling you right now. Another book that I have talked about a number of times, but I never will give up on, is The Door. Let me put that closer, by Magda Szabo. This is translated from the Hungarian by Len Ricks, and it has this copy has an introduction by Ali Smith. This is the story of two women. The Emerence is the servant woman who is taken on by a writer and her husband. And their relationship. And Emerence is a character you will never forget. This book is dense and brutal at times to get through, but the characterization, it's one of those novels when anyone wants to ask me about writing and description and how it creates place, time, and character, this is a book that I would give them. The translation is gorgeous. It is poetic at times, but it's just an amazing book about a relationship between two women, and also like passion and secrecy, and you guys, it is so good. And that's The Door by Magda Szabo, and this one's published by New York Review of Books, which you guys know how much I love them. So the next book will be, no surprise for many of you to see on this list, and that's Florence and Ecstasy by Jessie Chaffee. This was the first book that I ever read where I felt it took on eating disorders from an adult perspective, and in the same time made me want to visit Florence, Italy more than anything I have ever read in my life. Jessie Chaffee jumped off the page as far as an author that I think tackled a tough subject but kept it beautiful. And if anyone is ever looking for a novel that tackles something difficult like an eating disorder in such a poetic way, I highly recommend this book. It doesn't get much better, and I think about it all the time. I really do. Whenever people, it's one of my go-to recommendations when people want a book that they haven't heard of that tackles a tough subject. So, Florence and Ecstasy by Jessie Chaffee. One of my favorite books of all time, and one of my favorite authors of all time, is David Mitchell and his Cloud Atlas. This is, to me, one of those books. When I read how this book came together, I realized that brilliance can be in so many forms. This is a story that takes place over many different time periods. Each part is written in a different way, from a journal to start. There is like a Victorian novel in this. There's a sci-fi. There's so much. This book, to me, is almost perfect. And I give it to people as an example of creative literary fiction in a way that you've probably never experienced before. Yeah, and I think this copy is gorgeous. I got this signed by David Mitchell back in 2014 when I met him, and it is one of my prized possessions. And Cloud Atlas, I think it's freaking brilliant. Okay, three more, only three more. If anyone ever asks me, name a character that you cannot get out of your head, I will always mention Eleanor Oliphant in the novel Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I described this when I wrote my review and said in my video, Eleanor to me was if Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory had a dark past. She is a woman who she has had something happen in her past that has created to her to become obsessive compulsive. And this is about the time when something interrupts that and how it changes her life. You will never forget her as a character. This book is at times tragic, at times hilarious, at times so sad. But it's also inspiring on how people can change who they are through the friendships and relationships they create with others. It is also about how relationships with our parents can create who we are as a person. This won the best new novelist award from the Costa Book this year, and it is highly, highly amazing. And I promise you, you will never get her out of your head, ever. There you go. Okay. This book probably doesn't need much introduction either, and that is A Constellation of Vinyl Phenomenon by Anthony Marra. This is a debut novel about Chechnya. I don't know how to describe this book other than it is utter brilliance. This is a story of a young girl whose father is killed and how she is saved by her neighbor. Her neighbor then takes her to a hospital and delivers her to a doctor who is working in a rundown hospital with very little support, and leaves her. And that's how all of these stories intertwine. Yeah, I don't even know how to explain how brilliant this book is. But whenever someone wants a gut punch, a book that will just leave you speechless when you're done, Anthony Marra is one of my favorite writers. He's written 2 books, this one and a collection of interconnected short stories that to me are both flippin' fantastic. I ran into and met and had lunch with Anthony Marra. I think he is amazing. And this is a book where I just say to people, read this, you will not be disappointed. It's brilliant, brilliant. Okay, last but not least is probably the book that will be my favorite read of this year and is hard to talk about because it's becoming more and more relevant as the world goes on, and that's Red Clocks by Leni Zumas. This is probably doesn't need much discussion on my channel if you watch it. But this is about 4 different women and a slightly futuristic world where women's rights are under attack and laws are changing about reproduction. This book is told in a completely unique style. This book is about a topic that is becoming more and more relevant and more scary. It has 5 amazing women that you will think about when it's done. Leni Zumas is in my opinion, this is a masterpiece. It is a statement piece of who she is going to be as a writer. And every time someone asks me what's the best book I've read this year, I always mention Red Clocks by Leni Zumas. I think it's freaking brilliant. And if you want something that you can't get out of your head, promise, it won't be, yeah. Okay, so that was 11 books that I can't get out of my head. I want to thank Olive for allowing me to steal this idea. I hope you guys have read some of these and want to talk about them in the comments below. What are books that you can't get out of your head, you can't stop thinking about? As always, thank you if you are a return subscriber. I really appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope you liked what you saw. And until next time, happy reading, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!